I'm like, sister, your body, if someone was in a coma and they were pregnant, their body would birth their baby without even having consciousness, right? Like your body knows how to birth without you. And I thought, if some woman can birth in a coma without consciousness, that literally means I just need to shut my brain off and let my body work.
Welcome to the podcast, ladies. Today, I have such a fun birth story interview. I am interviewing Tayler Magee, who you may have seen her on my Instagram. We shared her birth video of her Breech home birth as a first-time mom. Wow, I am so stoked. This is not one of your typical birth stories. What a beautiful, I feel like this is a rare gem that she's going to be sharing with you guys. And I interviewed the Breech birth lady as well from Breech Birth on my show. That's her account on Instagram. And I'm so excited to have another Breech birth story on here to show you guys what is possible. So welcome to the show, Tayler.
Thank you, Karen.
It's great to have you. Tell me a little bit about your journey in how you ended up having or deciding to have a Breech birth at home as a first-time mom.
Yeah. So my journey and my birth story kind of starts way back at the beginning, years before getting pregnant. I really had to work through some challenging fears, and that took honestly years. And I hope that's an encouragement too, because sometimes we're working through fears and we're like, it's meant to be. I'm supposed to be working through this fear way faster, but it took a long time. It took me learning the physiology of birth, what is God's design, through not only books, but also Instagram accounts, and constantly giving myself the opportunity to see more positive outcomes with birth than the fear or the negative outcomes. And if we just rely on the world's view of birth, that's what we have, right? I was so afraid of the hospital setting. I was so distrusting of my body and my body's ability to birth that I told Karen I had this desire to have kids, and I love babies my whole life. And I ended up convincing myself and my husband that I didn't want kids because I was so afraid of birth. So years beforehand, just really working, again, following those accounts, working to educate myself on the physiology of birth. What happens within the body? What is God's design? What's happening in each stage of labor? And you start to just unravel all those fears by confidence when you're learning that God actually designed your body to birth perfectly. And that's not saying that there aren't situations where, birth complications or pregnancy complications come up. Unfortunately, we live in a world that kind of contradicts God's design for our body. So if we're not, careful and intentional with that, taking care of our bodies, or, we live in a world that's broken, and sometimes the enemy comes around and just complicates things in your story. But just really educating myself within that. Okay, how do I take care of my body? How does my body work in birth? And dismantling those fears. So that's really where it started for me. And it continued by learning how to take care of myself. If we want, Claire talks about this all the time. If you want to have good outcomes with birth, it comes from creating safety within your mind and your body. Yes. And creating safety within your body isn't just about okay, you started labor. What's your room look like? What's your state of mind? It comes from even the years prior to being pregnant and while pregnant. How are you taking care of your body to create that safety? That was a big focus for me in my pregnancy. If I wanted that home birth, which I did, I dismantled those fears. I decided, I'm confident in my body. I trust God. I'm surrendering, and I have the desire to have a home birth. But like I mentioned, obviously, complications can happen. So I decided if there's anything I could do, if there's anything in my power to create that safety in my body to be able to birth my baby and not have any complications, I was going to do it. And my background is in training and women's health coaching. So in integrative nutrition, I had a knowledge of that. So it was a big priority for me, creating safety in my body before labor even started, nourishing my body well, moving my body, releasing tension, getting adequate nutrients, which is a huge part of that, right? We're going to build a baby and birth the baby and recover well. We need to give our body what it needs to be able to do that, the resources. Nourishing my spiritual and my relational health, getting outside daily, resting and recovering, right? That's not just something after birth that we need. We need that beforehand. So a big part of my journey was creating that safety within my mind, dismantling those fears, but also within my body, creating that safety beforehand. And it was an amazing journey. I healed from hypothyroidism, endometriosis, finally got positive pregnancy tests. And that was my first positive pregnancy test, and carried him to term, had a home birth, breech home birth, birthed him without even like having to have, that fear or that support for the C-section that people say we have to have. So it's amazing.
Right. That is such a beautiful story. And I think a lot of women can relate to having that fear of birth, of childbirth, and getting to the point of not even wanting to have kids, even though you said you really did want kids. But we're so afraid, we're so conditioned to fear birth. And it's so tragic that I feel like the enemy steals that joy from so many women and plants that fear so early. But I love that you didn't just accept it. You actually went on a journey of renewing your mind, of dismantling those fears one by one. What were some of the things you did that really helped dismantle those fears for yourself? Because that's quite a journey to go from one extreme to now you're having a home birth with a breech baby. Like, I don't know. That must have been quite the walk.
Yeah, it was. And there's a lot of amazing resources out there. Karen, you're one of them. Like, listening to your podcast was a huge part of my journey, and I can talk more about that. But I really started with just following those Instagram accounts that share positive birth stories and seeing those on the daily. That rewrote a lot of the stories in my head. When you see something unfold in front of your eyes, it can no longer be a lie. So people say you can't birth at home. People say you can't birth a breech baby unmedicated or without a C-section. But when you see it, that's a lie. You can.
Yeah.
It's been done, So that was a huge part of it, was just seeing that on a regular basis, hearing other women's birth stories and allowing that to really sink in. And the other part of that was educating myself. So, there's amazing books out there that can educate you on the physiology of birth. Again, what is happening within your body on a really small level in every stage of birth. And you start to just be in awe of God's design, because you see every little detail of your creation is designed to birth and to not need assistance. And again, I say that lightly because I understand everyone's story is different, and some people do have complications, and that's where Western medicine comes in and is a miracle, right? When those complications arise, to have that help. But in an uncomplicated pregnancy and an uncomplicated birth, the body needs zero assistance. And when you start to really educate yourself on that, you have no fear of birth, because you fear God's creation more. You're more in awe of birth than you are of the fears of man in the world. So the book Orgasmic Birth was an amazing book for me. With that, anything from Ina May is amazing.
Yep.
And then just really following accounts and listening to your podcast.
Yeah, you mentioned just having more awe in God's creation. And one of the quotes I love is by Karen Strange. And I think this totally relates to what you're talking about. She says, birth is designed to work even if no one else is there.
Mm-hmm.
And I just love that, because if we can just sink in and surrender to God's design, the way he set this up, there is so much about the blueprint of birth that he took care of like you said, in an uncomplicated pregnancy where there's nothing coming up that's out of the normal, that's, that would require intervention. But for the most part, it's designed to work even if no one else is there. And we think we have this version of birth that it has to involve so much intervention and so many hands and people in the room and management, especially for something like a breech delivery. We think it must require even more intervention because of the potential for complications. And yet it's exactly the opposite. It's designed to work in case no one was there. And I just so admire your faith and your tenacity to put the work in to create that internal environment of peace, like you said. And it is so much about creating that safety in our own body and that trust with ourselves. And so what would you say when someone might say something like, oh, well, breech means that's an automatic C-section?
Yeah, I would say I thought the same thing. I think everyone does, because that's what the world tells you and that's what's common. And, I remember after the appointment, we found out he was breech. I think he was breech the whole time, but we did one ultrasound in the very beginning to confirm pregnancy, and then one in our anatomy scan. And at that point, they're like, oh, he's moving all around. They don't care if he's down or sideways. So we didn't do an ultrasound after that. And at like 28 weeks, I think it was, we're in an appointment with our midwives. And this is actually one of the rare occasions my husband couldn't make that appointment. My mom was there with me and they're feeling around. She's like, gosh, I just can't tell if this is his butt or his head. And they're good at this. They do it all the time. I'm like, that's probably his head, you know? So they're feeling around. They're like, do you mind if we just pull out? They had just gotten like this new ultrasound thing where they can connect to their phone. They're like, can we just check? And so I was like, yeah, sure, go for it. So she did. And she's like, I'm 90% sure that this is a butt down here, not a head. She's like, I think his skull is up in your rib cage. And so she looked again. She's like, yeah, 100%. That's dad's heads up. And so.
And how far along were you at this point?
I think we were 28 weeks, which was fine. Like there's still plenty of time for a baby to turn, right? Like babies turn right before labor.
Yeah, they typically turn around 34, 35 weeks.
Yeah, so. Yeah. So it was a good thing. She's like, it's okay. Like we've identified this early, but like here are your options. And she gave me, you know, like you can have a C-section, you can go on and do an ECV. She's giving me all these options, and I'm like low-key panic mode because my mom's so supportive and she's there and she knows we want a home birth and she's in awe of it. And I'm sending her all of these like unmedicated birth, home birth videos. So she's like getting used to it too. And then they're like, oh, your daughter has a breech baby. And she's probably thinking, oh, of course she's going to have a C-section. You know, that's what's going through my mind, which maybe it's not. But in my mind, everyone around me, I'm like, okay, they probably want me to have a C-section because she's not swaying me one way or the other. She wasn't like, you have a breech baby, Tayler. You could totally birth him at home still. But that's amazing medical care, is giving you all of your options and not trying to sway you one way or the other.
Yeah.
So I just remember coming home and being like, I got in the bathtub right before my husband got home, trying to calm my body and my mind down. And he gets home and he comes in, he sits on the edge of the bathtub and I'm just crying. I'm like, what do we do? Because I, like many other people, I had that instant like, oh, everyone just goes and has a C-section and I'm terrified of the hospital. C-section is the last thing I want. So I'm like crying to him and I'm like, I just don't want to make a decision based on fear. So I don't want to not have a hospital birth or a C-section if that's what's best for my baby because I'm afraid of it. And so again, here I am back in like, okay, we're fearful. We're making decisions based out of fear here. We didn't want to have a kid because we were afraid of birth. Now we like are here making this decision because of fear. So I just decided, you know, I'm going to take a deep breath and I'm going to go back on the journey of learning again. That's what dismantled fear in the first place. So I then really started to focus on educating myself on breech birth. And part of that was finding testimonies like Karen's podcast. I'm literally Googling breech births, like trying to find women who share their breech birth stories. And I did. And it just started to dismantle fear once again. Like once you hear something happened in somebody else's life, it is no longer not possible for you. So yes. I gave up that fear. I surrendered to God. Again, we had lots of time. I was 28 weeks pregnant, but I needed to be prepared either way. And I just decided, you know what, God, if you're going to keep him breech, I'm going to do everything that I can naturally. We decided not to do an ECV. I felt like it was invasive and interfered with God's plan. And that was just against my personal beliefs. So we didn't do an ECV, but I'm like, you know what? I'll do the inversions. I'll go in the water. I was doing bowstring. I was creating lots of room with my torso. I already have a long torso. So I'm like, I'll do everything. And if he doesn't decide to flip, then that is God's plan. And I'm confident in my body. My midwives are confident in my body and helping to assist a breech birth from home. So what should I have to fear? Literally only man and only the worldly stories and the worldly fears. So I just surrendered that. And I was like, God, if I birth in breech, then just use this in some way. And like, this is a full circle moment because I get to share this story and hopefully encourage somebody else. And I mean, at the end of the day, you need to birth where you're comfortable. If you feel most supported and relaxed in a hospital setting, that's where you need to birth. But if you have the desire to birth at home and you have a breech baby and all it takes is dismantling those fears, I'm happy to be a testimony. So yeah, that was a lot of
yes. And that testimony is so valuable. And that's why I share birth stories. That's why I interview women like you and want to share. And that's why I want these stories to go far and wide, because it's like the 4-minute mile. It's exactly what you said. Once you see it's possible, you can't unsee it. When
Yeah.
the first person was able to break a 4-minute mile running, it was thought that it couldn't be done. It was thought that humans physically couldn't run a mile in less than 4 minutes. And then as soon as the first person broke it, within a year or two, there was like a dozen other people that broke the 4-minute mile because it set a new precedent. It changed something in our brain that said, that's not possible. And wait, no, I just watched him do it. That is possible. And that means I can do it too. And I'm going to push myself to do that. And I believe that that's the power of the testimony that the Bible talks about, that when Jesus said that the spirit of prophecy is the power of the testimony is the spirit of prophecy. And as we share our stories, we give other women permission to believe that this could be possible for them.
Yeah.
And it's otherwise we just have to take what we're given because we'll believe what everyone tells us. Because if the status quo is you have a cesarean every time you have a breech birth or twins, that the safe option is a cesarean, or the safe option is to have it medicated and epidural and in the OR, and this is how it's done.
Yeah.
But we don't ever ask questions, and we don't realize that, well, maybe it's done that way, not because it's safest for me and baby, but because it's the least amount of liability for the hospital.
Right.
Or it's just the way they were trained 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah. Even now, like how many hospitals have physicians and OBs and all these different that have experience with breech birth? So few.
So few.
And now, I mean, because of accounts like the breech birth, there's so many. And I think Birthing Instincts is another great one.
Yes.
Breech Without Borders is another great one. So,
yeah,
I mean,
David Hayes, Breech Without Borders, Dr. Stuart Fishbein, Rixa Fries, they're all, I love these accounts. You're naming all the ones that are excellent to study for those of you listening that might have a breech birth. And I have Dr. Stuart Fishbein in my course. He does a special lesson just all on breech birth and twins. And they're pushing the envelope, these forerunners, in normalizing vaginal, breech, and twin delivery. And it's so important because our bodies are designed to birth babies in different positions, not just perfectly head down vertex babies. Like our bodies are capable of this, and women are believing it. They're seeing the stories, they're seeing videos just like yours on Instagram that I shared, where your baby like just pops right out. If you haven't seen her video yet, you guys, make sure like pause the show notes right now and go watch it. We will put the link in the show notes, and because we shared it and it is so awesome. And it's a testimony of what your body can do. And it's so beautiful. So thank you for sharing your story and being one of the voices, giving women permission to believe that this is possible. And it's not only just possible, like maybe for the rare occasion, but it's the safe option for a low risk pregnancy. It is safe. And Dr. Stuart Fishbein has tremendous research on this, because so much you were talking about how hospitals don't typically see this. And there's a reason for that, because the breech term trial back in the 80s made all the doctors put pressure on them to believe it was actually this study has been disproven now, but it did so much damage in the 80s and basically proclaimed that breech vaginal birth is unsafe and the safer option is to do a cesarean. But the evidence was not well documented. It was not a trial that was done according to the standards of what a trial should be done. They left out information. They narrowed things down. There was a lot of issues with it when you dig into it, but it did so much damage in that it set a precedent that doctors would not do vaginal breech birth as routine procedure. They would immediately recommend cesarean. And ever since then, we're repeating the same dogma from 40 something years ago when this trial came out that vaginal breech birth is not safe. And so dismantling these things and changing hospital procedure takes a long time once it's been set in stone. And very rarely, if ever, would they pull back on over managing women. If once they have something that gives them permission to manage birth more, they're not going to go back later and undo that. They're never going to be like, oh, this new evidence came out that says we don't have to do cesareans. We don't have to induce at 39 weeks. No, they're going to keep their procedure that it requires more intervention because they're getting paid more. They're doing more intervention that means less liability. And so they're financially and in every way incentivized to manage birth more. And you're rarely going to see hospital policy shift away from management once they have made the decision to manage in that
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. Well, and they're scared too, right?
Yeah.
Like all this comes down to fear. If you're just a nurse or a doctor in a hospital setting and your life is so busy, you don't have time to, nor do you want to research all this stuff on the outside, and you're being told that women die birthing breech, then of course you don't want your patients dying. You don't want babies dying on your watch. So
Yeah.
you're rooted in a fear that you haven't even confirmed is truth, right? As a healthcare worker. And that's the thing. Like a lot of these nurses and doctors and OBs, like they're not bad people. They're just afraid too. And they haven't been on that journey. And you have the opportunity to go on that journey. You have the opportunity to dismantle that fear. And I would encourage you to do it before you find out you have a breech baby, because most likely you're not going to be told that until you are far along. So starting that journey of really just educating yourself on what the body does with the breech birth and how it's not much different. And I can tell you that from my experience. Like I didn't birth a baby beforehand, but it was nothing different than what I thought birth would feel like. And it, timeline wise, all the things that lined up was just as normal as a head down baby. Your body or your baby, like nothing's broken, nothing's wrong. Your baby's not wrong for being that way. And when I decided that I was going to birth in breech, my midwife said one of the most encouraging things to me. And they said, you know what? If a baby is birthed breech, there's a reason for it. And sometimes your baby knows more than you do. And it could have been that his cord was too short. You know, like some breech babies come out and their cord is super short. So they're just getting in the right position to be able to come out. Or, you know, it could be your uterus. I know that was a big part of the breech birth, her episode with you. She was sharing that her uterus was shaped kind of like a heart. So at a certain point within growth, that baby was locked in where it was at. And if it was breech, it was coming out breech. It didn't have room to flip. And so who knows? That could have been my story. And that's again why I decided not to do the ECV, because if my uterus is shaped funny and we try to flip my baby from the outside and that puts him into stress, then it's an automatic C-section. Yep. And look, he came out just fine. So just trusting that process. But yeah, just encouraging you, like your body's not broken and your baby is really smart. Like I know you talk about this too, but labor is just as much your baby working as your body. They're smart. God's designed your baby to know how to move throughout the birth canal as well. Just because your baby is coming out and his shoulders are stuck, like he knows how to move. Just give him a minute. He's wiggling and support your body. Like get in a position that's going to support your baby too. But they're so smart, and just trusting, surrendering yourself, surrendering your body, surrendering your baby to God throughout that. And that's all birth is, right? Surrender.
Yeah, there must have been someone that said to you, oh my gosh, you're being so irresponsible. How could you have a breech birth at home? Did that happen?
No, you want to know why? I was going to say this too. So when we made the decision, so I have a social media account. I shared my whole pregnancy on social media. Obviously, like everyone around me knows I'm pregnant. I didn't tell anyone.
Oh, there we go. Well, that's easy.
I chose not to tell anyone. Like, why would I? A big part of surrendering and dismantling those fears too is protecting your peace. So when we made that decision, I decided I'm only going to tell a few people who are close to me, who I trust with like their reaction. Like I trust that they are going to put themselves and their fears and their knowledge aside and say, I support you. And so those are the only people that I told. And I told everyone after birth because I didn't want to have to work extra hard to dismantle more fears. And that wasn't truly going to add anything to me. I already did my research. I already talked to God. Like I made my decision. I didn't need other opinions. So that's also something I encourage you with is...
I love that.
Yeah, let's protect your peace. And
yes, protect your peace. Know who to share with. That's wisdom.
Yeah. And not every... Also, this is a hard thing. Like I'm blessed. I was blessed in this situation because I didn't have breech on my mind when I got pregnant. We chose the first midwives that we talked to and we just went with it, right? And they had confidence in home birth for breech babies, but not everyone is going to. And I would really encourage you, like I've heard so many stories from women who birthed breech who, you know, like they didn't have that experience. I was telling Karen as well, so when we decided we found out we were Breech. I was like working through these fears and I decided I was going to birth him, even if he was Breech, birth him from home. I prayed and I was like, God, again, I shared this already. If we birth him Breech, please use this. I was blessed to have care providers who were confident, but even if you don't have that, you still have the opportunity to find someone.
Absolutely. And who you choose is a big deal. It makes a big difference. Tell us how it unfolded when you went into labor after all this work, all this preparation, and you have providers to support you and believe in you. Tell us about that day and what happened with baby.
Yeah, this was like, I could sit here and tell this over and over again. And I could talk about birth forever, but like the most amazing experience. Like before giving birth, I was like, no way these people actually look back on birth and are like, I would do it again. And I wish I could birth like, I literally feel that way. I'd be pregnant and birth again because of that experience. So
You get it. You get it.
Yeah, I get it now. I get it.
As a first-time mom, ladies, listen to this. This is not just for second, third, fifth-time moms. You can have this experience the first get-go. Why wait? Why wait for your second?
No waiting. Because that's more stuff to work through after your birth. Just, do it now.
Have your dream birth the first time.
Yeah, for sure. Well, okay, so his due date was the 23rd, and I'm expecting it's 23rd of June. I'm expecting to go like weeks after that. Everyone's like, it's your first baby. You're going to carry him 2 weeks late at least, And I'm prepared. I'm like, I don't care if I'm 3 weeks late because maybe they got my due date wrong. It's just a guess date. I'm prepared. So I'm like, I still got a month left. Yeah, no, it's the day before his due date. I got a workout in the morning. Great workout. Felt great. I went to my cousin's graduation party. I was helping set up. We were there all day. And I'm driving home from that. And I stopped at my mom's house to grab something. And then I'm driving home. And this whole time I'm like kind of randomly feeling crampy. I'm like, oh, we've been here before, whatever. I still got 2 weeks, maybe 3, maybe 4. So I'm like ignoring it. And it's like still coming back. And so I tell my husband, I'm like, I'm cranky today. He's like, okay. He's also in the mindset, like, we got weeks. Which we were prepared. We were ready mentally. Everything here was ready. We have it all done, but we just were prepared for a long, long pregnancy. So anyway,
I always tell women, just plan, especially first time moms, plan to go a week late. In your brain, it's not 40 weeks. It's at least 41 weeks. Because statistically, that's average. Is first time moms will go a week and a day late, 8 days technically, quote unquote late, which is really not late. It's average. So, but if we're stressed out about the due date, thinking as soon as I'm a day or two past my due date, we're overdue, we're late, our doctors are pressuring induction. It's this whole mental battlefield of stress and anxiety. Avoid all of that and just plan. You're going to go late. And if baby comes earlier, great, bonus. You got the cherry on top. You're full out 3 weeks. Okay, I'm prepared for that. I love it.
And just be flexible with that part too. That's part of protecting your feast is just preparing to carry late, but also
it's part of surrendering. We don't have control over some of these things, and that's by design.
And neither do doctors, because I also had a friend who was pregnant at the same time, and she's reaching out to me, being afraid of having to be induced because she's at the end of her pregnancy and all these things. They changed her due date and pushed it out because they realized, oh, we might have been wrong, all these things. So no one knows, unless you have even for myself, he could have been 2 weeks late. I had a pretty regular cycle, but right before I got pregnant, my cycle was a little bit off and I had this weird random 2 weeks. I had a little bit of a bleed and then 2 weeks. And so you just never know. You unless you're perfectly scheduled.
Even if you get that 10-week dating ultrasound, those measurements are very accurate in terms of dating. That's probably our best measurement tool for truly dating a pregnancy. But even if you have that and they know, okay, this is your exact due date, there's variation. Not every baby cooks to exactly 40 weeks. And there's so much variation in terms of gestation that could be due to genetic factors, your diet, your lifestyle, your stress levels. I mean, in France, they consider 41 weeks full term. That's their 40 weeks. And I'm like, okay, if other countries look at it as 41 weeks, who are we to freak out if we're 40 plus 5 or 41 plus 2. Like, let's
Yeah.
just
And like,
all relax a little
are
bit.
the babies over there fine? Yeah, they're fine. Okay. So
They're
41 is okay.
they're smart. Like you said,
Yeah.
babies are smart. Your body is wise. It knows when to go into labor, when they're ready.
Yeah.
So I love
Yeah.
this. Great conversation.
Yeah. So I'm like trusting this and thinking I'm way, way further
Trusting
out.
it so much you didn't even recognize when labor started.
Yeah. So, it's like early evening at this point, and I'm doing some gardening work and I'm still feeling crampy. And instead of it being like a constant crampy, now it's like I'm randomly feeling it and then it's going away. I was like, okay, this is, we're moving in the right
There's
direction.
a pattern to
Yeah.
this.
I was like, okay, patterns, waves, we're kind of getting a little closer, which it could have totally died down, but it didn't. So it's like 7 p.m. and I messaged my doula and I'm like, okay, I'm been really crampy today, kind of hitting it in waves now. She's like, hey, get in the bathtub. If it doesn't go away after you've relaxed in the bathtub, you're in early labor. So did that, still in early labor. So Nick and I are like, okay, we're going to bed because we need to get sleep.
Smart woman.
Yeah. So we go to bed and I got a little bit of sleep, but around 4 a.m. I was like, not really sleeping great anymore. Finally got up around 6 and I'm feeling enough to not sleep, but not like, oh my gosh, this is getting intense. So I'm walking around the house. We're doing some meal prep. We're doing some gardening. We're just, having a good time, listening to music, talking it up, eating some good food, just, relaxing. And so I'm progressing and I'm, on the birth ball, moving all around. And it's like early afternoon. So on his due date, a day after I had gone into early labor, my doula calls me and we had this app where I'm like sharing my contractions with her and my timing and all that. So she's like, I can't tell if you're in active labor and you're just handling it really well, or we're like just hanging out here with these contractions kind of close together. So she's like, trying to listen to my voice. She's like, are you like having a conversation with me? She's like, you're not really like sounding like you're in crazy active labor, but your contractions are going pretty good. She's like, so let's do the mile circuit. So I do the mile circuit and it's like 4:30 when I finish that. My midwives end up coming over to just check on me. And they were like, okay, well, your water hasn't broke. We can do a check if you want and see how dilated you are. Doesn't really matter. We know that's when we start to study birth. Doesn't really matter. I can't tell you like, oh, you're dilated. You're going to give birth at this time. Like you could tense up with fear and then you're prolonging that, or you could have your baby in the next hour. Like you just don't know. So I was like, sure, let's just do it. See where we're at if we're close to active labor. So I was 5 centimeters dilated at that point. So I was moving along and she's like, okay, well, call me when anything changes, but just relax. So at this point, I'm thinking, oh, it's still going to be a while. I send my mom and my sister are there. Just my sister's going to take pictures. My mom is like making sure we have food. I send them home like, it's going to be a while. Like, just go home. Literally within the next 30 minutes, I'm like progressing really fast. So, yeah. So my doula comes and I'm in active labor, full in active labor. And my midwives come back, probably an hour after that. And I'm getting into transition. And just, I think the most like special part of it is I thought I was going to, Christian Hypnobirthing, she has an app and there's these amazing tracks. And I did this birthing playlist on Spotify. Yeah, amazing. This birthing playlist on Spotify and I had it playing in my living room, just worship music. I created my own like playlist with that. I was so sure that during birth, I would have to have like the tracks in my ear and really be listening to the playlist and like have things like center me. And even afterwards, like a few days after, I was just telling Nick, my husband, how amazed I was. Like there were no thoughts. There was nothing. There was no fear. I didn't need to I didn't turn on the tracks once. My doula had asked me like, do you want me to turn those on? And I was like, no, I'm good. There were no thoughts. There was no fear. I was just riding the waves with my body. And I had mastered this, I could start to feel it coming on. And I knew it was just this beautiful wave. I could start to feel it. And then it was just like deep breaths and then it would die down. So I had mastered this, right? Like I would start to feel it and then I would sway. No, it didn't matter what position I was in. If I was like leaning over, standing up, laying down, like I would just move through that and breathe. And I knew it was just a few deep breaths and then I would come out of that. And so I had mastered that rhythm and it was so beautiful. And I was just in awe of the fact that like in between these big waves, these massive, intense contractions, it was just a few deep breaths of that. And then there was complete rest. And I think you hear that before birth too, like I did, but I could have never understood that that was actually like full calmness in your body. And
So
part
wait,
of that,
let me get this straight. Was there
yeah.
any point in labor where you felt like you hit a wall or you got scared or you were like, I can't do this?
Yeah. So I had prepared before labor too. Like I told myself and my doula and my husband, if I have a fear, I want to vocalize it. I don't want to let
Love it.
it because then that's just going to escalate. Like keeping fear in the dark, what does that do? It lets the enemy escalate it. Putting it in light dismantles it. And so
Yes.
I was prepared for that. And there were 2 points in labor where I vocalized that. And it wasn't like I'm so scared and I'm like really tense. It was like the the literal instant that I started to feel any bit of fear, I vocalized it. And that was right before I was going to hit transition. So I vividly remember this. We're in the bathroom. Things are intense when I'm in those waves. I had my hands on my windowsill and I'm swaying back and forth between them, breathing. And my husband's like, look outside. And I'm like watching this beautiful sunset, but I could feel something changing. Like I knew transition was coming. And my midwives were filling up the birth pool. And my midwife comes in. She said, hey, the pool's ready for you. Your body's ready for you to get in it. But I want you to sit on the toilet for a few contractions before you get in. And I'm like, I know this is going to be intense because I had done that throughout my labor. And that's where I progressed the most, which I think is pretty common. Your body wants to relax on the toilet. So it was natural.
Yep.
But
We
I
call
like,
it the dilation station for a reason.
yes, yes. But I knew it was going to be so intense. And so I looked at my doula and I was like, I'm afraid. I'm afraid of this. And
Wow.
she's like, that's okay. It's okay to be afraid. You can do this. Your body was made for this. It was designed for this. And you've got this. You've mastered it up to this point. Like you've got this. So I take a few deep breaths and I sit down. And sure enough, like 2 contractions later, they were pretty intense. 2 or 3 contractions later, we go into the birth pool and I had hit transition at that point. I'm in the birth pool. Things are still intense, but like, again, there's zero. After I expressed that I was afraid, it was it. That was it. There's nothing after that. It was just gone, like in one ear, out the other. My body felt no tension from it. And I think that that is the beauty of vocalizing it and getting that affirmation that you already know, but you need from someone else in that moment is like, it didn't give my body the chance to build up tension. There was no tension from it. I just let it go.
There's no analyzing it. There's no,
Yeah.
it's stuck in your head. It's just, it comes in your heart. You recognize it. You like to be conscious of your fears like that and to vocalize them immediately in such a vulnerable way. That is so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And so beautiful that you did that and that you had the support immediately right there to move through them. And that's what I tell women is it's not about not having any fear. It's not about like eradicating every fear as if you're a robot now. It's about you're still human and you're going to have those fears pop up. The enemy is going to whisper things in your head. There's going to be doubts that creep in, but how quickly you recognize them and choose to move through them rather than fighting it internally. That's what makes all the difference.
Yeah. And two things. This is an encouragement for women who are pregnant. Get really good at being intuitive now. Like recognize your emotions, vocalize them to the people around you who support you. Because if you just shut that off your whole life and expect to have it in birth, it's not going to happen. Like you have to learn how to, you have to learn how to acknowledge your emotions and release them and work through them and accept support. If you are one of those people, I was that person, still had to work through it, where you think you can do it all on your own. Like sometimes you need support in birth. If a fear comes up, sometimes you need that affirmation. And that's one thing. This is the second part is that I remember now my doula had told me this is normal. That's so powerful. This is normal. It's normal to be afraid. It's normal for this to be intense. That's part of labor. You're doing great. And I needed that. Like because sometimes the fear comes from being like, something's happening that's not normal. And so when you hear someone who's like been at a million births tell you this is normal, you take that deep breath. So that was amazing as well.
I love that. What did the contractions feel like for you? I mean, you described them, the waves and the breathing. Would you consider them painful or intensity or pressure or like what did that feel like?
Yeah. So I always say they were intense. Like it was intense in my body for a few deep breaths. I wouldn't say it felt like pressure. Pressure wasn't a word that like made sense to me. In labor, it just felt intense. Like my body was just working really hard in that moment. My body was just really working hard to push my baby down. And I didn't need to do that work. I just needed to breathe and let my body do that work.
Oh, that's
And
so key.
yeah. And when you know, like, again, I had been in labor for long enough, you start to get this rhythm. Like I knew the second it's not like boom, contraction. It's like you start to feel your
Yeah,
body start to
it's a
tighten up
buildup.
a little bit. Yeah.
Mhm.
Like a small period cramp. That's what it feels like in the beginning. And then you know, you're on that rise of that wave. So it's like, okay, I'm starting to feel this. Now I quiet everything. I move and I breathe. And that was it. It was like a few deep breaths of like
Mm,
tense work that my body was doing. But my job was just to breathe and relax and let my body work. And
beautiful.
I knew after a few deep breaths that it was dying down and you can feel it. It's the same way you can feel it start to rise. When you're taking those deep breaths, you start to feel your body just slightly start to relax. And then you're like, oh, yes. And it's just a few more deep breaths and it's that full relaxation where you can get a drink of water, you can have some food,
Yeah.
unless you're like active labor past transition, then you don't want the food. You just want to embrace that rest, look at your husband, relax a little bit.
Is there anything about this delivery being a breech birth that was different in any way other than the baby's, butt coming out first than a normal birth?
Yeah, like I said, this is my first birth, so I have nothing to compare to. But as far as my expectations, no. I moved along quickly. There were no stalls in labor. Like when I hit active labor, I hit active labor. It was like, I think 7:30 when my midwives got there and I was in active labor. I hit transition around like 8:30. I was in the pool. I started to push there. That was the second time I felt fear when I vocalized that was I had gone through transition, gotten the birth pool. I was relaxed. But again, like these weren't even thoughts in my head. I just instinctually knew a change was coming.
Mm.
And that's where that fear came from. And I didn't notice in the moment, reflecting back afterwards to figure all this out, but I didn't have to process it. I just said, I'm afraid. and,
Mm.
and a big part of that was because I knew pushing was coming. Like I knew I was there. My body was starting
Yeah.
to get ready to push. And one of the big fears that I had to work through and prepare myself for was I didn't want to tear. And so I learned the physiology of birth. I learned that your body pushes your baby down. You don't have to do it. You just need to relax, breathe.
Yeah.
So I wanted that for myself. I wanted to relax. I wanted to let my body push and I didn't want to tear. And so I had mastered labor up to that point. I felt so good. Like I mastered the waves and mastered all these things. And so this was new territory and I didn't want to tear. So I was, I don't know, maybe afraid that I wouldn't know when my body needed to push. So I'd be pushing when my body wasn't supposed to be pushing and I would tear. And again, this wasn't what I was thinking in the moment, but when I reflect back, I was like, well, my body must have instinctively known I was ready to push. And I guess I looked at my doula and I was like, I don't know when to push. She's like, honey, you'll know. Like, you'll know. So I verbalized I was scared at that point. And she's like, okay, it's okay to be afraid. It's normal. You're doing great. And when your body's ready, it will push. And so again, that was just like deep breath and the fear was gone. And sure enough, my body started to push. I know like a common thing is people asking what does it feel like to push? And I think that's a part of where that fear came from. Cause like, I didn't know what to expect. And I don't know if you've ever heard this, but I feel like it was throwing up, like, but backwards. Like I didn't feel nauseous, like I had to vomit, but you know that feeling when your body just starts to
Yeah.
involuntarily like
Yep.
throw up.
Yep.
That's what it felt like. It felt like my body was like involuntarily gonna like throw up, not the nauseous part, but the contraction. If you pay attention to this the next time that hopefully this doesn't happen because no one ever gets sick. But if you do get sick and you're throwing up, pay attention to what that feels like.
It's like a reflex. You can't stop it. It just
it's a
happens.
reflex. You just throw up. Yeah.
That's actually an accurate way to describe it. I think it's less acute though when it's birth because your body is bearing down and it's like, that kind of like you can't not push when your body does it. And it is excreting a human from your body. There is an excavation happening and a giant push from your uterus, your vagina, everything, your pelvic. It is boom happening.
Yeah.
And you can't, you better just get out of the way.
You just let it happen. You don't have to do anything. Trust me, your body will do it. And it is that reflex. And I think for me, like I had master labor and when contractions came, I mean, as you get closer to transition, you start to just, if you let yourself make noise anyways, but my focus was just my breathing and whatever happened. Well, like when you start to push, you're like you're making noise. Like if you go through pushing and you're quiet, I admire you because that is, I don't know how that happens. So I feel like that's just like how I felt. It's like, okay, like what's happening?
So
You know?
I totally relate. It's so much energy. Like
Yeah.
you have to do something with that energy, and like vocalizing can be really helpful. It
Yeah.
wasn't until my third that I learned some breathing techniques that helped me like and then I was actually more quiet. But I see birth videos of both really loud women and really quiet women. I'm like, I've done both, and
Yeah.
they're both. There's no wrong way. There's no
No.
wrong way. It's like what works for you.
Yeah. And my sounds were like, I also knew this was a good point for not hearing someone, multiple people had said this, but like those low sounds. So
Yeah.
I could push that low sound to try to like help with that. And it honestly just felt natural, but that was my focus. But yeah,
Love
I got
it.
into pushing and then he was birthed by 10:30. So I think I hit transition
Wow.
around 8:45. And then I got in the pool. I think I got out of the pool around like 9:30, 9:45. And then I went into the bedroom. I birthed him on the floor. We knew that as a breech birth that I was going to labor in the pool, but I wasn't going to birth there because gravity helps with a breech birth. When you're in the pool, it kind of lifts up and that's why it gives you relief. But we wanted gravity to do the full work when I had a baby.
That's
So
smart.
yeah, my bed was set up and I had like a yoga mat right below the bed. My husband was laying on his belly on the bed with his head here. So his hands were off the bed. And I was on the floor, like on my hands and knees, holding on to his hands and just like letting my body hang, but like in that kneeling position, like a child's pose. But my chest was elevated so that gravity was pulling him down. And yeah, I mean, my body was doing the work with pushing. I was, in another dimension, but letting things happen. And at the same time, so peaceful. Like I look back at my birth video and I'm just like in tears. I had, like the calming lights, the light was off. We had some salt lamps and some like fake candles, like that you would take to the hospital. Obviously you can't have an open flame. And I didn't want it getting knocked over. That would not be fun. Your house catching on fire. So I did the fake candles, but just like the most peaceful environment. And so well, I was in a different dimension. My body was so calm. And yeah, I mean, you can see it in the video. My body's pushing him out and his butt is the first thing to come out, but then his legs like flap out.
Yeah, it like pops right out. You're like, whoa.
Yeah. Yeah. And then my body is still pushing. And I think I would have to look back at it. I was telling Karen, I think my midwives, I need to ask them, I think they helped like his chin come out. And that's a common maneuver with breech is just to like help the chin get out. And then on the next push, he just fell out. And I was very, very close to the floor. My midwives were actually like, okay, can you put one foot up? Because my mobility, my hips, I could be in that child's pose position fully sitting up, but my butt was on the floor. So they elevated me. I had one foot up and one knee on the ground and he came out, but he was like right on the floor already. So I just stepped over my umbilical cord, sat down and held him in my arms and there he was.
Wow. How did that feel right after delivering the baby? What was your first thought?
It was the most amazing thing. And again, I guess I never looked at it like I just did something uncommon. I just did something dangerous. I just did something rare. It just felt normal. So and there was no point where I was like, oh yeah, I'm birthing a breech baby. Oh yeah, this is rare. It just felt natural. It just felt normal. And the most like
should be.
Yeah.
As it should be. Like it is rare. But it's also the most normal thing.
It is. Yeah. All birth is normal. And I think that I will say this is one of the most encouraging things that I heard and that I say to women who are getting close to birth and if they have any fears. I'm like, sister, I heard this. I don't know where. I wish I knew so I could tell you so you can go hear it from them. But your body, if someone was in a coma and they were pregnant, their body would birth their baby without even having consciousness, right? Like, your body knows how to birth without you. And I thought, if some woman can birth in a coma without consciousness, that literally means I just need to shut my brain off and let my body work.
Yes.
So that gave me so much empowerment. Like it didn't matter. The person who's unconscious, they're not like, oh, my baby's in this position. That means I can't birth. No, their body's going to birth that baby. Doesn't matter. Does not matter.
It literally oozes out the baby. They just lay there unconscious and the baby oozes out. They've documented this. I know what you're talking about. And it's like you're absolutely right. Like logically then we just need to get our head out of the way because
Literally.
that's what's going to mess this up
Yep.
more than
Yep.
anything.
That's why you have to just be so prepared to like, well, work through those fears before birth, but they're going to come back up. You might not even know. Like I said, I didn't know why I was afraid. Coming back to it, I was afraid to tear. So that's probably why when I was getting in this new phase of pushing and not knowing, like, will I know when to like push that I don't, like, I wasn't thinking that in the moment, but those fears are rooted. So they will come back up. And being able to vocalize that in the moment just gives you that freedom to like, let it go and move your mind out of the way and let your body do the work.
I love that. Even just knowing like, yeah, they're going to come back up and that's no big deal. That's
Yeah.
okay. That's part of the process even is but you're getting so familiar with this and you're entertaining the truth of birth and the truth of how God designed your body. And when you obsess over that and that becomes your new like view of life, the view of the world, your perspective shifts. Then when the lie comes up again, because it was rooted, you recognize it quickly because it's in direct distortion to what you know to be true.
Yeah, you already worked through it. You already know the truth. It's still there because it's a root, but you know when it comes back up, like that root is down in the soil. But when you start to see it above it, you just clip it again.
Yeah,
you just know.
Pluck that boy right up and throw it away. Like no big deal. But
And
I think so many women they assign this meaning when their fears come up, like, oh, I didn't really work through it. I'm not free, or I'm still struggling with this. And it's like, we don't have to make it mean anything profound. It's just part of being human. Like, let's just take that and go, oh, I don't have to hold on to you for more than a moment. I can say hi, I can let you go, and I can deliver my baby. Like we're okay. My body is wise. It knows what to do. And that's why I think I love birth affirmations, because it's like sometimes if we're not fully conscious to recognize those fears when they show up, the birth affirmations are a great way to ground yourself and anchor that truth in even deeper.
Yeah. And that's also the importance of picking who is at your birth is so important, because one fearful person in the room will change that energy.
Yes.
And in the 100%. Moment where you're afraid, you need everyone in that room to be confident in you if you have a moment of fear. Every single person. So you can't be afraid to like tell someone, sorry, you're not going to be part of my birth. Like maybe you do that in a kinder way, but it's part of protecting your peace. And I do think that's why I had such an amazing home birth with a breech baby is I didn't tell anyone. I protected my peace. And then we got to labor and I made sure my birth team, like anyone who was there, my mom, my sister, I was sending them my whole pregnancy. And from the time I decided they were going to be there and beyond, they were getting birth videos from me like every day, home birth videos. I'm like, I don't even want to see a scared expression on your face. Like you better be so normalized with everything that's happening.
I love that. Like this is your admission ticket. Like I think I told one of my friends at my birth, like you have to read Ina May's Guide to Childbirth if you want to be there. Like you need to get on the same page, because I'm not having anyone scared. Same as you. Like it's so important because their energy, they're going to bring an energy, and it's either faith or fear. And you wanted them to be a resource to you. You don't want to have to be the one taking care of their fears, like in labor. So.
And same thing with your care providers. Like the biggest thing I can tell you is ask questions throughout your pregnancy and ask questions before you choose them as your team. Like I will always ask now. I mean, I hope we have all of our babies with our midwives that we did, but there's a chance that someday we move, we relocate, and I have to find a different team, or this team isn't here anymore. You know, that can happen. And I will be asking what their stance is on all of these different situations to get that read on their energy right away and their comfortability, because that's okay. If the team isn't comfortable with a breech birth or a home birth or whatever it is, that's okay. They're for someone else, but they're not for me. So making sure you find out if they are for you, and throughout your care with them, ask questions like, if we're in this situation, what does that look like? You know, ask them questions so that you know that they are comfortable and calm and confident in the situations that could arise. That way you've tested them, right? Like they're not going to bring fear back.
Vet your providers, ladies. Definitely. 100%. Well, thank you, Tayler. This has been so encouraging and packed with so many like potent tips of how to prepare, how to even just go through the process of each contraction and what you did and how it felt, and vetting your providers, like just chock full of practical, powerful tools for women. I hope those of you listening got so much out of this. And Tayler, would you just tell women like where they can find you if they want to connect with you directly?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram. So my at name is Taylor's Health Hub, and I'm Taylor with an E. So if you spell it OR and you don't find it, that's why. Taylor's Health Hub with an E.
I love it. Definitely check out her page. She's got some amazing, even like helpful tips on you overcame endometriosis and some infertility battle struggles and just coming into a point of health. And I just admire your tenacity to tackle anything that life throws at you, whether that's, oh, your doctors are saying you're not going to get pregnant, or you have these health conditions, or you have this fear of childbirth, or now your baby is breech. It's like, okay, what's next, baby? Like, we're going to go headstrong into it. And just your faith and belief in yourself, the way that you so beautifully and intuitively connected to your body in labor, and your intuition, that you trusted yourself, the way you vocalize things. Like, there's so many takeaways here. Guys, drop a like message me when you listen to this. I would love to hear, and message Tayler too. Like, what was your biggest takeaway from this episode? Because I'm just imagining my editors, like, I don't even know what clips to clip out of this, because for real, because there's so many good things.
Well, good. That makes my heart so happy. Thank you, Karen, for having me. And yeah, I would love to be in conversation with any woman who needs encouragement around birth. My passion is like all of these obstacles that come my way, being able to like pay that forward to somebody else. So like in my practice, if you are somebody who is struggling with infertility, or maybe a challenging pregnancy, or you've had a challenging postpartum or birth, and you want to support your body maybe in a little bit of a different way to hopefully have a different outcome, like I'd love to be here for you, even if it's a conversation, if it is working with you and coming alongside of you and being part of your journey. That's a huge honor and blessing. But sometimes a conversation can go a long way, or a podcast, listening to a different conversation can go a long way. So just never be afraid to reach out. I'd love to be here and be a resource and a friend for you.
That's amazing. We all need someone who believes in us and believes that what we're really desiring is possible, even when we doubt ourselves. So thank you for offering yourself as a resource to so many women, and for offering your story, because this is going to encourage and uplift so many women. And so I pray that this goes far and wide, and that many, many dozens and dozens or hundreds of breech births would come about from this testimony. So,
Amen. Amen.
yeah, it's a good prayer. We'll end with that, and we will see you guys next week.